The day the drums began to speak, no one believed tragedy would answer them. In the small riverside village, the morning sun rose gently, brushing the mud houses with gold, and everything felt blessed. It was a wedding day, the kind people talk about for years. Children ran barefoot through the dust, laughing. Women sang as they tied colorful wrappers around their waists. Men gathered under the old mango tree, arguing happily about food and music. In the middle of it all was Ebony, the bride, sitting quietly as elder women braided her hair and rubbed sweet-smelling oils on her skin. Her smile was soft, full of hope, the smile of someone who believed life was finally opening its arms. Ebony had grown up like everyone else in the village, fetching water from the river, pounding yam at dawn, dreaming simple dreams. She was kind, gentle, and known for helping others even when she had little. That kindness was why people loved her, or so she believed. As she sat there, dressed in white beads and fine cloth, her heart beat fast, not with fear, but with joy. She was about to marry the man she loved, a hard-working fisherman whose laughter filled her chest with warmth. Today was meant to change her life forever, in the best way. Around her were her closest friends, girls she had grown up with since childhood. They laughed loudly, teasing her, calling her a woman now, no longer a girl. They fixed her necklace, adjusted her head tie, and whispered jokes that made her blush. To anyone watching, it looked like pure friendship, the kind that survives time and hardship. But beneath their smiles, something dark stirred. Something old. Something hungry. You see, in many African folktales, not all enemies come with loud voices or angry faces.
Some sit beside you.
Some braid your hair. Some call you sister. The village had its stories, stories elders told by firelight about jealousy that turns into poison and friendship that hides sharp teeth. Ebony had heard those stories too, but she never believed they could touch her life. She trusted easily. She loved deeply. And that trust was about to be tested in a way she could never imagine. As the sun climbed higher, the sound of drums grew louder. The groom's family was on their way. Soon, the bride would be led to the river for the final blessing, a tradition older than anyone could remember. The river was the heart of the village. It gave them fish, water, and life. It was also said to be watched over by ancient spirits, spirits that listened carefully to human hearts. On wedding days, the bride would touch the water, offer prayers, and ask for fertility, peace, and protection. It was a beautiful ritual, one filled with respect and caution. Ebony's friends insisted on walking her there themselves. "We are your sisters," they said, smiling. "Who else should take you?" The elder women agreed, pleased to see such loyalty. And so, with songs and laughter, the girls led Ebony toward the riverbank, away from the noise of the crowd, away from watchful eyes. The air felt cooler near the water. Birds flew low. The river flowed quietly, as if it was listening. As they walked, Ebony noticed a change. The laughter softened. The songs faded. One of her friends squeezed her hand too tightly, then quickly let go. Another avoided her eyes. Ebony felt a small shiver run through her body, but she brushed it aside. It was just nerves, she told herself. It was her wedding day, after all. Anyone would feel strange. They reached a quiet spot by the river, where tall grass swayed and the water shimmered dark and deep. This place was known, yet feared. Elders warned people not to play here, not to speak carelessly, not to bring bad thoughts. The river spirits were powerful, they said, and power could bless or destroy. Ebony hesitated, her heart suddenly heavy. "Is this the right place?" she asked softly. Her friends smiled again, but their smiles did not reach their eyes. "Trust us," one said. "This is where all brides come." They began to sing, low and slow, a song Ebony did not recognize. The words felt strange on her ears, twisted, old. The wind picked up, and the water rippled in circles. Ebony tried to speak, to ask them to stop, but her voice felt stuck in her throat. In African tales passed down through generations, magic often begins with a song. Not the kind meant for joy, but the kind meant to bend fate. Ebony's friends held hands around her, their faces serious now, their eyes burning with something that looked like anger and pain. Years of jealousy, a feeling unseen, of watching Ebony's kindness turn into happiness they believed should have been theirs, poured into that moment. The river began to bubble. Ebony's heart raced. She felt dizzy. The world spun as fear finally found its voice inside her chest. "Please," she whispered. "What is this?" But her friends did not answer. They sang louder. The water rose higher, touching her feet, cold like death. She tried to step back, but her legs felt heavy, rooted to the ground. In that moment, Ebony realized the truth too late. This was no blessing. This was betrayal. On the very day she was meant to become a wife, her life was being torn away by the people she trusted most. The drums from the village sounded far away now, like echoes from another world. No one could hear her. No one could see her. The river surged, wrapping around her ankles, her waist, her chest. A strange numbness spread through her body. She screamed, but the sound drowned in the rushing water. Her friends watched, their faces pale, their mouths still moving in song, even as fear flickered in their eyes. Power is a dangerous thing. Once released, it does not always obey. As Ebony felt herself changing, felt the world slipping away, one thought burned brighter than all others. Would anyone come for her? Or would the river swallow her story, turning a bride into a secret and a wedding day into a curse that the village would whisper about for generations? The water closed over her head, and the river went silent. The river closed over Ebony's head, and for a moment, everything became still. The noise of the world faded into a deep, heavy silence, the kind that presses against the ears. She felt herself sinking, not falling fast, but being gently pulled, as if invisible hands were guiding her downward. Her chest burned as she struggled for air, panic tightening around her heart. She kicked and reached out, but the water felt thick, alive, unwilling to let her go. Then something strange happened. The pain eased. The burning in her lungs softened into a dull ache, and her body began to feel different. Lighter in some places, heavier in others. She could hear her own heartbeat slowing, matching the rhythm of the river. Ebony did not understand what was happening, only that she was no longer drowning the way she should have been. Fear mixed with confusion, creating a new kind of terror. Above the surface, her friends stumbled backward, breaking their circle. The song stopped suddenly, like a string snapped too tight. For a long moment, none of them spoke. They stared at the water, waiting, listening. The river looked calm again, almost innocent, its surface smooth and dark. One of the girls began to shake. "Is it done?" she asked in a small voice. No one answered her. They had not planned for the silence that followed. They had imagined shouting, thunder, maybe even laughter from the spirits they thought they were pleasing. Instead, there was only the soft sound of water moving and their own heavy breathing. Guilt crept in, slow and uncomfortable. Another girl turned away, covering her face. "We should go," she whispered, "before someone comes." And so they ran, leaving the riverbank as if chased by unseen eyes. Their footprints faded quickly in the wet sand, erased by the water they had called upon. Back in the village, the wedding drums continued, unaware. The songs rose higher, full of joy, calling a bride who would never answer. Beneath the river's surface, Ebony drifted into darkness. Memories floated through her mind like broken pieces of a dream. Her childhood laughter. Her mother's voice calling her name. The fisherman's smile when he asked her to be his wife. Each memory felt painfully far away, as if it belonged to someone else. She tried to hold on to them, afraid that letting go would mean losing herself completely. As her body changed, the river seemed to open into a wider world. Shapes moved in the shadows, slow and graceful. She sensed eyes watching her, ancient and curious. In African folktales, rivers are not empty places. They are homes to spirits, guardians of balance who remember every promise broken and every truth buried. Ebony felt their presence, not as words, but as weight, as judgment. She wanted to speak, to explain that she had done nothing wrong, that she was only a bride who trusted the wrong people. But her mouth would not move the way it used to. Her voice felt trapped inside her thoughts. Panic rose again as she realized how alone she truly was. Back on land, the groom waited. Hours passed, and confusion spread like smoke. People laughed at first, thinking the bride was simply being prepared, teased by her friends as tradition allowed. But when the sun began to slide toward the sky's edge and Ebony still had not returned, the laughter died. Whispers replaced it. Something was wrong. The groom stood up, his heart pounding. He called her name, loud enough for the ancestors to hear. No answer came. The elder women exchanged worried looks. This was not how a wedding day should unfold. Someone mentioned the river, and the word fell heavy between them. The village knew too well that the river could be kind or cruel, depending on what it was given. A search began, hurried and tense. Men grabbed torches. Women clutched their wrappers tight around them. The joy of the morning had drained away, leaving fear behind. When they reached the riverbank, they found nothing but disturbed sand and silence. No footprints led back. No sign of struggle. Only the river, calm and watching. The groom fell to his knees, his hands trembling as he touched the water. He whispered her name again, his voice breaking. The river did not respond. Elders muttered prayers, their faces grim. They spoke of old magic, of envy that poisons the heart, of vows broken before they are even spoken. No one said the word out loud, but everyone felt it. Betrayal. As night fell, the village changed. Fires burned low. Songs were replaced with mourning chants. The wedding feast went untouched. Somewhere deep in the river, Ebony felt the shift. She sensed the pain of those who loved her, felt the echo of her name carried on the water's surface. It stirred something inside her, something stubborn and alive. She began to understand her new body, even as fear clung to her. She could move through the water now, feel its currents as if they were part of her. But with that understanding came a terrible truth. The river was no longer just a place she visited. It was becoming her world. The spirits watched her closely. They did not speak, but she felt their questions. Was she angry? Was she broken? Did she seek revenge or justice? In African tales, what a victim becomes often depends on what they hold in their heart. Ebony did not know her own heart anymore. It felt torn between grief and a quiet, growing strength. Above the river, her friends lay awake in their huts, haunted by what they had done. Sleep would not come. Every splash of water sounded like a warning. Every dream twisted into nightmares of scales, cold eyes, and a voice calling their names from the depths. They told themselves it was over, that the magic had taken its price and would now rest. But deep down they knew better. Some actions do not end when you walk away. The river shimmered under the moonlight, hiding its secrets well. To the village, it looked the same as it always had. But beneath that calm surface, a story was changing shape. A bride had been lost, a friendship shattered, and a curse awakened. What Ebony would become, and what that would mean for everyone who betrayed her, remained unknown. The river kept its silence, but it was not finished listening. Days passed, but the village did not return to normal. The absence of Ebony hung in the air like a shadow that refused to move. Her name was spoken softly, often followed by silence. The groom stopped fishing. His nets lay dry and tangled beside his hut, as if they too were grieving. Every morning, he walked to the riverbank and stood there, staring into the water, searching for a sign, a ripple, anything that would tell him she was still somewhere in the world. He remembered the way she used to laugh when he splashed water at her feet, how she teased him for talking to his fish like children. Those memories cut deeper now, because they felt unfinished. In African folktales, love does not always end with death, but it is often tested by forces beyond human understanding. The groom felt that test tightening around his heart. Part of him believed the river had taken her. Another part believed she was still alive, changed but not gone. The elders gathered more often, their voices low and serious. They spoke of old warnings that had been ignored, of jealousy among young women, of magic passed down in secret. One elder, bent with age, reminded them that the river listens closely on wedding days. "It hears wishes," he said, "and it hears curses." His words made the women shift uneasily. Everyone knew friendship could turn bitter, but no one wanted to admit how close betrayal had been. Meanwhile, Ebony learned to exist in the in-between. She was not fully what she used to be, but she was not fully something else either. The river carried her gently through its hidden paths, teaching her its moods. She felt the pull of the moon, the rise and fall of the current, the quiet language of water moving over stone. Sometimes she felt strong, almost peaceful. Other times, grief crashed into her without warning, heavy and sharp. She watched the village from below, careful to stay hidden. The surface of the river was like a mirror she could never quite break through. She saw feet at the edge, shadows bending close, tears dropping into the water. When the groom came, her heart ached in a way that made her want to scream. She tried to reach him, but the river held her back, firm and unyielding. It was as if the spirits were saying, "Not yet." The spirits themselves remained distant. They did not comfort her, nor did they threaten her. They simply watched, waiting. In many African tales, spirits are not cruel or kind by human standards. They are keepers of balance. Ebony began to understand that what happened next would depend not only on them, but on her choices, and on the choices of those who had wronged her. Her friends carried their guilt like a sickness. One of them, Saad, was the youngest and the weakest among them. She had followed the others out of fear, not hatred. At night, she dreamed of water filling her hut, of scales brushing her skin, of Ebony's eyes staring at her from the dark. She woke up sweating, her heart racing, whispering apologies into the empty air. Another friend, Kemi, tried to convince herself it had been necessary. She told herself that Ebony had always been favored, always loved, while the rest of them struggled in her shadow. Yet even she avoided the river now. She crossed herself when she passed it and hurried her steps, afraid of what might rise to meet her gaze. Strange things began to happen. Fishermen complained that their nets came up empty or torn. Children said they heard singing near the river at dusk, a soft, sad sound that made their skin prickle. Livestock refused to drink from certain parts of the water. The village whispered again, fear growing roots. The elders performed small rituals, offering kola nuts and palm wine, asking the river for peace. But the offerings felt weak, uncertain. They did not know what the river wanted, or who it was protecting. Ebony felt the offerings sink into the water, felt the spirits stir slightly. She sensed their attention turning toward her, heavier now. She wondered if she was meant to become a warning, a story told to frighten careless hearts. Or if she was meant to return, changed but still herself. The thought of returning filled her with both hope and terror. Would the village accept her? Would the groom recognize her soul, even if her body was no longer the same? One evening, as the sun bled red into the sky, Ebony followed a familiar pull and rose closer to the surface than ever before. She broke the water just enough to see clearly. The groom was there again, alone, his shoulders slumped. He spoke her name like a prayer. The sound reached her, and something inside her answered. The water around her shimmered, reacting to her longing. For a brief moment, the river seemed to loosen its grip. Ebony felt herself rising, hope swelling in her chest. But then the spirits pressed in, firm and silent, and the water closed again. The message was clear. The story was not ready to move forward. Too many truths remained hidden. Back in the village, tension grew between families. Some accused others of hiding knowledge. Old friendships cracked under suspicion. The wedding that was meant to unite the community had instead exposed its deepest fractures. The groom's family demanded answers. Ebony's family demanded justice. And still, no one spoke openly about the girls who had taken her to the river. Saad stood at the edge of confession many times. She went to the elder's hut, only to turn back. Fear wrapped around her throat. She worried not only about punishment, but about what might happen if the truth awakens something even darker. In African folktales, words have power. Once spoken, they cannot be taken back. The river flowed on, patient and watchful. Ebony drifted within it, caught between love and loss, between anger and mercy. She felt herself changing slowly, shaped by the water and by her thoughts. The question that haunted her was not just what had been done to her, but what she would do next. The village waited, the spirits watched, and the river kept its secrets, for now. The signs became impossible to ignore. The river no longer behaved like it used to. At dawn, mist rose thicker than before, curling like fingers around the trees. At night, the water reflected the moon too brightly, as if polished by unseen hands. People began to avoid the river after sunset, locking their doors early, pulling their children close. In African folktales, when nature changes its rhythm, it means something buried is trying to surface. The groom felt it more than anyone. His dreams grew sharper, heavier. Almost every night, he dreamed of Ebony standing in shallow water, her face half in shadow, her eyes full of words she could not speak. Each time he stepped toward her, the water rose between them, pushing him back. He woke with tears on his face and the sound of rushing water in his ears. Sleep no longer rested him. It only pulled him deeper into questions with no answers. One evening, driven by grief and stubborn hope, he went to the elders alone. He knelt before them and spoke from his chest. He told them he believed Ebony was still alive, not in the way people usually mean, but alive in spirit, bound to the river. The elders exchanged long looks. No one laughed at him. That silence was worse than disbelief. An old woman among them, known for hearing what others could not, leaned forward. Her voice was low, careful. "If she is there," she said, "then the river has not finished speaking. And if the river has not finished speaking, then neither has the truth." Her eyes scanned the room slowly, stopping on each face, as if daring someone to break. That night, Saad could no longer bear it. The dreams had grown too real. She felt watched even in daylight, felt cold touches on her skin when she passed near water. Guilt sat on her chest like a stone. She went to the river just before dawn, her heart pounding, the sky still dark. She knelt at the edge and whispered Ebony's name, tears falling freely. "I'm sorry," she said over and over. "I didn't want this. I didn't want this." The water rippled. Saad froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, the ripples widened, gentle but deliberate, as if something below had heard her clearly. Fear and relief crashed together inside her. She leaned closer, shaking. "If you can hear me," she whispered, "please forgive me." The river did not answer with words, but the water brushed her fingers, cold and alive. Saad pulled back with a sob, knowing, without doubt, that Ebony was still there. Word spread quickly after that. Not the full truth, not yet, but enough to stir panic. People whispered that the river was restless because it had been wronged. Some said a bride's spirit walked beneath the water. Others said a curse waited to break free. The elders ordered a gathering, calling everyone to the open ground by the old mango tree. No drums were played. No songs were sung. Ebony felt the shift immediately. The village's fear flowed into the river like a tide. The spirits stirred around her, closer now, heavier. She sensed that something important was approaching, something that would change everything. The river no longer pushed her away when she rose closer to the surface. Instead, it carried her gently upward, as if preparing her. From below, she watched the gathering. She saw her mother standing stiff and silent, pain carved deep into her face. She saw the groom, thin and hollow-eyed, refusing to look away from the river's direction. And she saw them, her former friends, standing together but no longer united. Fear had cracked their bond wide open. The eldest elder spoke, his voice steady but grave. He talked about balance, about how jealousy poisons communities, about how secrets rot when buried too deep. His eyes settled on the young women. "The river has been disturbed," he said, "and it will not rest until the truth is brought into the open." Kemi's hands trembled. She felt the weight of the village's gaze pressing in. Pride battled fear inside her. For a moment, she considered staying silent, letting someone else speak. But then she heard it. A sound drifting from the river, faint but clear. A humming, soft and sorrowful. Her blood ran cold. She knew that voice. She had sung beside it all her life. Ebony felt herself responding to the sound, her own emotions shaping the water around her. She was no longer just a victim carried by the river. She was becoming part of its voice. That realization frightened her more than the transformation itself. Power without control is dangerous. And her heart was still full of pain. The humming grew louder. People turned toward the river in fear and awe. Some fell to their knees. Others backed away slowly. The groom stepped forward, his chest tight, tears streaming down his face. "Ebony," he called, his voice breaking. "If you are there, I am here." The words cut through her like a blade of light. The water surged in response, rising higher along the bank. The spirits pressed in around her now, their presence unmistakable. They did not block her path. They watched, waiting for her choice. Ebony felt the pull toward the surface stronger than ever. She also felt the weight of what would come next. Once the truth surfaced, nothing would return to how it was. Love would be tested. Guilt would demand a price. And the river would decide what balance truly meant. Saad stepped forward, sobbing openly now. Her voice shook as she began to speak, each word dragging itself out of her chest like a wound reopening. Before she could finish, a sudden wave rolled up the riverbank, stopping just short of the gathering. Gasps filled the air. The water shimmered, alive with tension. Ebony hovered just beneath the surface, closer than she had ever been, her heart pounding in a body that was no longer fully human, yet not fully something else. She could feel every emotion above her, every fear, every regret, every unanswered question. The moment she had been drifting toward was finally here. The river held its breath.
So did the village.
The wave slowly pulled back into the river, but the tension it left behind was heavier than before. People stood frozen, unsure whether to run or pray. The air felt charged, as if one wrong breath could break something sacred. Sada's mouth was open, her confession trapped halfway between fear and courage. Everyone was watching her now, but the river was watching too. Before Saad could speak again, a sharp cry cut through the crowd. An elder man staggered forward, clutching his walking stick. His face had gone pale. "This is not the river alone," he said, his voice trembling. "There is another force here." Murmurs rippled through the gathering. People exchanged worried looks. The idea that something beyond the river spirits was involved sent a chill through the crowd. Beneath the surface, Ebony felt it immediately. The water around her shifted, no longer moving with its usual steady rhythm. A cold current brushed past her, unfamiliar and unsettling. It did not feel like the river spirits she had come to sense. This presence was restless, impatient, almost angry. Fear tightened around her heart. She realized then that her friend's betrayal had done more than change her. It had opened a door. Long ago, the elders had spoken of forbidden charms, magic taken not from the river but from darker places, used when jealousy overpowered wisdom. Ebony remembered fragments of those stories now, tales told in whispers, warnings wrapped in proverbs. She understood with growing dread that her friends had not only called on the river. They had brought something else into it. Kemi felt it too. Her knees weakened as memories she had tried to bury rose up. She remembered the night before the wedding, when they had gone to see a woman who lived at the edge of the forest, a woman people avoided but secretly sought. At the time, Kemi had told herself it was just to scare Ebony, to stop the wedding, not to destroy her. But the woman had smiled slowly and said power always demands payment. Kemi's breath came fast now. The humming from the river twisted into something sharper, uneven. The water darkened near the bank, swirling in tight circles. People cried out and stepped back. The groom held his ground, his eyes fixed on the river, his heart pounding with a mix of hope and fear. "Ebony," he whispered again. I'm not afraid. The spirits gathered around Ebony more tightly now, no longer distant observers. She felt their concern, their warning. The balance they guarded had been disturbed too deeply. What had been done was not a simple betrayal between friends. It was a wound in the fabric between worlds. If it tore further, the river would not be the only thing affected. Suddenly, the water surged again, higher this time, spilling over the bank and soaking the ground where the people stood. Gasps filled the air as a shape moved just beneath the surface, too large and too deliberate to be ignored. Children screamed. Mothers pulled them close. The elders raised their hands, chanting prayers older than memory. Ebony felt herself pulled in two directions. One force urged her upward, toward the surface, toward truth and revelation. The other dragged at her, cold and heavy, trying to bind her fully to the river, to claim her as its own forever. Panic spread through her. She realized this was no longer just about returning or staying hidden. Something was trying to use her transformation for its own purpose. The forbidden magic, awakened by jealousy and fed by fear, wanted more than silence. It wanted consequence. It wanted to turn a single tragedy into a lasting curse. Saad finally found her voice, breaking down as she spoke. Words tumbled out of her, raw and messy. She confessed to the gathering, to the elders, to the river itself. She told them how envy had poisoned their hearts, how they had sought help from the forest woman, how they had been promised that Ebony would be removed without blood. Her voice cracked as she admitted they never asked what that truly meant. With every word, the river reacted. The water churned violently now, as if arguing with itself. Ebony felt the spirits pressing harder, trying to shield her. She also felt the darker force growing impatient, tightening its grip. Her body ached, caught in the struggle. She wondered if this was the true price of betrayal, not just loss, but becoming a battleground for powers she never chose. The groom shouted Sada's name, rage and pain burning through him.
You knew, he said.
You all knew. His voice echoed across the water. The village felt like it was holding its breath again, waiting to see what the river would do with this truth. The forest woman's name was spoken at last, and the air shifted. Elders gasped softly. That name carried weight, history, regret. They knew then that this was bigger than a wedding day gone wrong. The conflict had roots deeper than any of them wanted to face. Ebony rose closer to the surface than ever before. Just beneath the water, her form shimmered, not fully visible, but enough to send shock through the crowd. The groom fell to his knees, tears streaming freely now. I see you, he whispered. I feel you. His words reached her, cutting through the chaos like light through murky water. For a brief moment, the darker force loosened, distracted by the surge of emotion. Ebony felt clarity rush in. She understood that whatever happened next would define not only her fate, but the fate of everyone connected to her story. The river spirits were waiting for her decision. The forbidden magic was waiting too, hungry and restless. Thunder rolled in the distance, though the sky was still clear. The water trembled. The village stood on the edge of something irreversible. Ebony hovered in that fragile space between worlds, her heart racing, knowing the next moment would push the story toward a point of no return. And the river, ancient and powerful, prepared to answer. The river suddenly went quiet. Not calm, but tense, like a held breath. The churning water stilled, the ripples freezing in place, as if time itself had paused. Everyone felt it. The elders stopped chanting. The children stopped crying. Even the wind seemed to pull back. In that silence, Ebony rose. She broke the surface slowly, water sliding away from her like it knew her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some people fell to their knees. Others covered their mouths in shock. What emerged was not a monster, not a thing of nightmares, but not fully human either. Her eyes were the same eyes the village knew, deep and gentle, filled with pain and strength. Her voice, when it came, did not come from her mouth alone. It echoed through the river, layered and powerful. I was a bride, she said, her words clear but carried by water. I was a friend. I trusted. Saad collapsed to the ground, sobbing openly now. Kemi tried to step back, but her legs gave way. The truth they had buried stood before them, undeniable. The groom pushed forward without hesitation, wading into the water until it reached his knees. Tears streamed down his face, but his voice did not shake. I am here, he said. I never left. The forbidden force surged then, angry at being exposed. The water darkened again, pulling violently at Ebony, trying to drag her back under. The river spirits rose around her like unseen pillars, holding the current at bay. The struggle shook the ground. Trees bent. The river roared with a sound that felt like a warning and a plea all at once. The eldest elder stepped forward, his voice loud and steady despite the fear in his eyes. This village has been poisoned by envy, he said. Balance must be restored. Not with silence. Not with denial. He turned to the young women. You invited this power. You must face it. Kemi screamed as the water rushed toward her feet, stopping just short. She felt the weight of her choices crash down on her. We didn't mean for this, she cried. We just wanted her happiness to stop reminding us of our pain. Her confession cracked something open in the air. The forbidden force faltered, weakened by truth spoken aloud. Ebony felt the pull ease. For the first time since her wedding day, she felt fully present in herself. She looked at her friends, her heart heavy but clear. You took my future, she said softly, but you do not get to decide who I become. The river spirits responded. The water surged one final time, not in anger, but in judgment. The forbidden magic was dragged downward, stripped of its hold, its hunger silenced. The forest woman's power broke like a chain snapped under pressure. A wind swept through the village, warm and cleansing, as if something old had finally been released. The river began to glow faintly, light shimmering beneath the surface. Ebony felt her body changing again, not forced this time, but guided. The pain faded. The weight lifted. Slowly, carefully, she stepped forward, out of the water. Each step felt like a miracle. When she reached the shore, she collapsed into the groom's arms, fully human once more. The village cried out in relief and awe. The elders bowed their heads. The groom held her as if afraid she might disappear again. Ebony breathed deeply, feeling the ground beneath her feet, the warmth of his skin, the sound of life returning. The main conflict had ended. The curse was broken. The truth had been spoken. But the river was not finished. As the celebrations of relief began to rise, Ebony turned back toward the water. The spirits stirred one last time, and this time, they spoke clearly to her heart. They reminded her that balance always requires memory, that forgiveness does not erase consequence, that stories must carry warnings forward. The water rippled, and a single fish leapt from the river, silver and bright, landing at the river's edge before slipping back in. Ebony felt a strange pull in her chest, not fear, but understanding. The spirits had returned her life, but not without leaving a mark. That night, the village slept peacefully for the first time in many days. The river flowed gently again. The elders declared the curse ended. The groom believed it too. But Ebony lay awake, listening to the water call softly to her. At dawn, she went alone to the riverbank. The mist curled around her ankles, familiar and welcoming. She knelt and touched the water, and in that moment, she felt it again. The pull, gentle but undeniable. Not a curse, a bond. From that day on, Ebony lived among her people, married, loved, respected. But whenever she touched the river, her reflection shimmered strangely. And sometimes, at dusk, villagers swore they saw a fish swimming close to shore, watching with eyes that looked almost human. Ebony never spoke of it. She only smiled, knowing the truth. She had been saved, yes, but she had also been chosen. And the river, having once claimed her, would always remember her as its own. Life did not return to normal all at once. Healing, like the river, moved in its own time. In the days after Ebony's return, the village stayed quiet, as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace that had settled over them. People watched her closely, not with fear, but with awe and curiosity. She walked the paths she had known all her life, greeting neighbors, helping her mother, sitting with elders. She laughed again, but her laughter carried a new depth, shaped by everything she had survived. The groom stayed by her side, protective but gentle. He did not ask questions right away. He understood that some answers needed space. When he looked at her, he saw the woman he loved, but also someone who had crossed into a world he could never fully understand. Their love changed, becoming quieter, stronger, built on patience instead of dreams alone. In many African folktales, love that survives the supernatural becomes something sacred, and the village began to see their bond that way. The elders called another gathering, this time not in fear, but in reflection. They spoke openly about jealousy, about how unchecked envy can destroy communities from the inside. The story of Ebony's wedding day became a lesson, told carefully, without cruelty, but without hiding the truth. Parents warned their children. Friends looked at each other differently, more honestly. The river had exposed what silence had allowed to grow. Saad faced the hardest path. She came to Ebony one morning, her eyes swollen from crying, her body trembling. She knelt and begged for forgiveness, not expecting it, only needing to speak. Ebony listened quietly. She remembered the pain, the fear, the loneliness beneath the water. Forgiveness did not come easily, but it came honestly. "I will forgive you," Ebony said softly, "but trust must grow again slowly." Saad accepted this, knowing it was more than she deserved. Kemi left the village soon after. Shame weighed heavily on her, and she chose distance over facing the whispers. Some said she went to another town. Others said she wandered, searching for peace. Ebony wished her healing, understanding that running from guilt is its own kind of punishment. The forest woman was never seen again. Elders said her power faded the moment the forbidden magic broke. Others believed she moved deeper into the wilderness, cut off from villages forever. Whatever the truth, no one sought her out again. The lesson was clear: shortcuts fueled by envy always demand a price. The river slowly returned to its old ways. Fish came back to the nets. Children played at the banks again, though with new respect. Offerings were made regularly, not out of fear, but gratitude. The river had not just taken, it had given wisdom. It had reminded the village that nature listens, remembers, and responds. As for Ebony, her bond with the river never disappeared. She could feel it when rain fell, when the moon was full, when the water sang at night. Sometimes she dreamed of swimming effortlessly beneath the surface, not trapped, but free. These dreams did not frighten her. They felt like reminders of strength, not loss. One evening, long after the story had settled into memory, Ebony sat by the river alone. The water glowed softly under the moon. She whispered a prayer, thanking the spirits for returning her life. The water rippled gently in response, as if answering her. In that moment, she understood fully. She had not been turned into a fish to be punished. She had been transformed to be protected, to survive what should have ended her. She rose and walked home, her heart light. Behind her, the river flowed on, calm and patient, carrying her story forward. It would be told and retold, changing slightly with each voice, but always carrying the same truth: that friendship must be guarded, that jealousy destroys from within, that love, when rooted in patience and honesty, can survive even the deepest waters, and that sometimes the most powerful magic is not found in curses or spells, but in truth spoken aloud and forgiveness chosen freely. In the end, Ebony was no longer just a bride or a victim or a legend. She was a woman who had crossed darkness and returned with light. And the river, ancient and wise, remained beside the village, watching, listening, and reminding everyone that every action sends ripples far beyond what the eye can see. And so the story ends, as all good African folktales do, not with fear, but with understanding, leaving behind a lesson carried gently on the flow of water and time.